Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Life by Design podcast. On this week's episode, I talk with Mark Rushmore. Mark is the founder of Suri, the world's most sustainable toothbrush. Mark started his career at P&G in sales and commercial roles before he was acquired by Kellogg's while working on Pringles. Following a wild journey that led him down a number of different paths, he then took a year off to consider his next and ended up in a 12-month personal development program by Tony Robbins. It opened his eyes to different possibilities and is now managing the extraordinary growth of Suri, the electric toothbrush. In this week's episode, expect to learn what a B Corp business is, addressable markets, innovation, creating a 7- and 8-figure business, the highs and lows of business, and much, much more. Enjoy the episode. Now, guys, before we start this week's episode of the podcast, I want to talk to you about the Life by Design Mastermind. The Life by Design Mastermind is the mastermind for go-getters and high achievers who are looking to create a more successful, fulfilling, and balanced life by design. If you're serious about transforming your life, achieving your goals, and living a life on your terms, then the Life by Design is your golden ticket. Head over to the show notes and click on the link for more details about the program. Mr. Mark Rushmore, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Hey, good to have you here. It's been 6 weeks, I think, since we hung out in one of my favorite moments and memories of life, baby bathwater for those listening. And we had a bit of a chance to chat there. Not a huge opportunity. There's a lot of people and a lot of conversations that were had. So today is an excellent opportunity to deep dive into you, your world, how you do business, and everything in between. But before we dive into that, can you give the guys a 60 to 90 second spiel of who you are and what has got you to where you are today?
So my name is Mark Rushmore. Likewise, it was an absolute pleasure to meet you, Blake, and I've definitely got some good stories for your listeners about how I met you and what went down. But my quick spiel is I was born in Brunei, but I grew up in Scotland to Welsh parents. And it was an entrepreneurial family. So my parents set up a small company when I was younger, and it almost became like a third sibling to me. And so I kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit in me from like a very early age. And then at university, while I did my degree, I also set up a sort of society, almost like a business, and grew it sort of quite rapidly and found that that was really my passion. But shortly after leaving university, I joined the graduate scheme of a big company called Procter & Gamble, where I learned all about fast-moving consumer goods, working on various sales and commercial roles, ultimately running Pringles in a commercial capacity when it was bought by Kellogg's. And it was around that time, I was really fortunate. I was in my mid-20s, and we got about 3 years pay for about 6 months' work as we transitioned the company. And so from having like virtually no savings, I had a bunch of savings. And at the same time, an old friend from university who seemed really super happy, unfortunately, and it wasn't a super close friend, but a friend nonetheless, committed suicide. And I thought, I'm not going to wait to sort of like live out all my dreams and, when I'm 60, retire. I'm going to write a list of all the things I've ever wanted to do. So one of them was like, I want to do an adventure which would take more than my annual holiday. I want to learn a skill that lasts a lifetime. I want to learn more about social media. I want to set up a business. And so I moved to Canada, learned to become a ski instructor, which was a skill. I undertook a challenge where I cycled from Canada to Mexico with a friend, which was more than 5 weeks. I won a social media competition to take part in a round the world yacht race called the Clipper Race. And then I set up the UK office of a German experiential marketing agency, and then rapidly scaled that. So within 6 months, to 7 figures, and then had, various ups and downs over several years, ultimately selling that company 5 years later. And then most recently, I've teamed up with an old colleague of mine. Actually, it's a great story how we met, to set up Suri, which is short for Sustainable Rituals. We make the world's most sustainable and desirable electric toothbrush, and it's rapidly scaling. So a really fun journey. I appreciate that's probably more than 60 seconds, but there you are. That's my slightly potted life history.
I like it. And we'll go straight into business. And for those that I obviously love the sustainable element to your business and really drawn to that, but for those that are new to business lingo, what's a B Corp in terms of the way your business is set up?
So a B Corp is basically, well, it's an accreditation, and what it says, and you have to enshrine this within your legal policies essentially, is that you're operating your business for profit and people and planet, so equally. So, it's all very well, everyone obviously wants to make profit, but, doing the right thing by people, whether that's, diversity policies or ensuring that your suppliers are paid in a fair way, but also for the planet. So, you go through this accreditation process and you learn a lot about, how you can improve, your company and the way it operates in the world. So most companies on average have a score of around 50 when they start. To become a B Corp, you have to have a minimum score of 80, and it takes a full year to kind of go through that process and achieve that sort of minimum threshold.
Why would what's the, like, obviously the sustainable elements to your business, and I'm looking forward to kind of delving into that. Why would someone be fixated on making their business B Corp certified, if that's the right lingo?
So I think there's two elements to it. So firstly, purely just from like what you're putting out into the world and how you go about the way you do things, I don't think anyone or most people wouldn't claim to like be perfect or have all the answers straight away. And so it gives you like really great guidelines in terms of things that you can do to improve the way you operate, and so for example, Suri, going through that B Corp journey, we created all these additional policies which we hadn't thought about for our employees, but also for our suppliers, which has increased overall happiness and, really attracts, better talent to the business. So I think it's really good for that perspective, but it's also really good as a label which more and more consumers recognize to say, like, this company, operates from a kind of set of principles which are aligned with my values. And so I think it works on both ends like that.
What was the process for you like in setting up this business? Was it, when you're making a decision, do you see the opportunity or do you think about your values first? And how did this kind of come to fruition for you?
So it's actually a wild sort of story, in as much as it was, several years ago, I'd invested a small amount of money, like a very small, like, I don't know, a few £100 into my friend's business, which had been selected by Unilever to attend the Cannes Lions Festival. For those who don't know, that's like the Oscars of the advertising industry. Globally, everyone descends on Cannes in the south of France. And it's just debauchery for 5 days whilst everyone gets together. And I was super lucky to be there as a guest of Unilever, as an investor in my friend's company. And I bumped into the CMO, Keith Weed, who just mentioned to me, oh, I'm hosting a private party on an island off the coast this afternoon, and we've got one space left. Do you want to go? It's like, do I want to go? Yeah, of course I want to go. He's like, well, can you get down to this dock at, like, what is it, 1:25 p.m, dock 8, and there's one space on a rib. And I was like, 100% I'm going to be there. So I turned up and, get onto this boat, and there's 4 people. One of them is Sir Martin Sorrell, the founder of WPP, the world's largest advertising group. Another one is the CEO of Pearl Fisher. And then there's this other guy who's about my age. We're about 20 years younger than the others. And so I'm sort of really starstruck, because at the time I had my agency business. I wanted to sell it to WPP, and here I am with like the founder, like the king of Cannes. And so when I got to the island, I was like speaking to the young guy, how are you here? And he said, oh, I'm actually the head of business development and a sort of aide de camp almost for Sir Martin. But I used to work at Procter & Gamble. And I was like, me too. And, he was saying, I'm doing this job, but one day I want to set up my business. I said, oh, I've got a business. And in my head, I was thinking like, oh, I want to meet up with this guy because I'm going to try and sell my business sort of through him to Martin Sorrell. But it was literally that first meeting. He said to me, you know what, while we worked at P&G, I realized that, there's so much waste and fast moving consumer products, that is. And, I think the future of consumer products will have like sustainability at their core, and they'll also have like a much larger e-commerce component. And so, we met when we were back in London. I sold my business. He worked in e-commerce companies for a venture capital business. So he learned all about that. And when we sort of looked into categories, and to your question, I'd had Oral-B as a client in my last company. So I was sort of familiar with how they engage with dental professionals. And he'd sort of sat beside Oral-B when he was working on Gillette in Geneva. And what we discovered was 2 things. And so it was kind of simultaneous. Like, on one hand, both of us were about to have daughters and we want to do something more meaningful with our lives. But on the other hand, we discovered that every year 4 billion toothbrushes are thrown out and end up in landfills or oceans. And what's more is virtually every brush you've ever owned since you were a little boy, Blake, still exists. Like we all like to think, what's our legacy going to be when we die? You don't want it to be like lots and lots of plastic toothbrushes, right? And 50% of people in the UK, US, Germany at least use an electric brush. I'm sure it's the same in Australia because they're up to 5 times more effective than using a manual brush. But what, like, even though you've got those crazy stats on sustainability, like electric brushes haven't meaningfully changed in decades. They remain like as bulky as they were in the 1980s. They often have a poor battery life because of things that people don't use, like Bluetooth. I mean, I should double check actually. Do you use an app to brush your teeth twice a day?
Do I use an app?
That reaction says it all. And this is it.
I get you. All right, I'm with you now.
An app? Yeah. And it's like, of course I don't. I've asked probably 5,000 people. 2 have been like, of course I use it. And, they show me the data from the last 3 years. The other 4,998 don't. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is as a result, it's got poor battery life. And so, yeah, we thought it doesn't have to be like that. So we saw, a lot of people brush their teeth, Blake. There's a huge market, but you only have 2 players who've become relatively apathetic, we believe, to their consumers.
So who are the 2, I know who the third player is, but who are the 2 main players prior to you guys starting to take these on?
So with an 80% market share between the 2 of them, you have Oral-B and Philips.
Yep.
And those are the 2 ones. Now, you've got to think, this is kind of wild. There's very few categories in that I'm aware of where you have 2 people with such a huge market share. So if you think of consumer products like shoes, I'm not familiar with apparel, but I suspect you don't have 2 players.
You have more than 2.
Just dozens. Sunglasses, t-shirts, shampoo, toilet paper. It's kind of wild. Most categories have at least 5 sort of people with a significant market share. In electric toothbrushes, it's a very complex sort of business to get into. And so there's really just 2 competitors.
So when you're making
2 main competitors, there's lots of smaller companies.
Yeah, gotcha. So when you're making this decision to obviously create this new business, you've obviously, what are the elements that were involved for you in terms of the decision making? So you've looked at it and gone, from a competitor point of view, there's 2 main competitors taking 80% of the market share. You've both had insights into Oral-B. There's the component of wanting to look after the planet a little bit more. What other components did you, and what other thought process did you go through before making that decision?
Yeah, great question. So before this, I managed to sort of get involved with a Guatemalan friend of mine who was setting up a tequila business in Mexico. And so we actually made 1,300 bottles of tequila, really, really tasty premium tequila. But the problem with tequila is that it's a subsegment of a subsegment and requires a lot of education. So, not everyone drinks tequila. When you go on a night out, there's lots of different options. And so your market's small, but if you want to expand the market, you have to invest in education. How many people do you know that brush their teeth, Blake?
I know a lot of people, and I'm concerned for anyone that doesn't.
Right. It is let's start at the beginning. It's a huge addressable market. Everyone brushes their teeth. 1. 2, electric toothbrushes are the fastest growing segment of that market because they're so much more effective than manual toothbrushes. So as you see, that's just in Western society, but as as China and as other markets develop, more and more people will be moving to electric toothbrushes. So it's just a ginormous market. So when people talk about market size, it's one of the biggest ones, right? And it's something that people use twice a day, and yet people are just so used to what's available. And I think so, a huge addressable market, but with some serious issues, both in terms of sustainability and user experience. And so some genuine pain points. How many people do you know, Blake, who've told you what toothbrush they use? As a conversation point. Oh, hey, Blake, guess what? I bought a new toothbrush. Has anyone ever done that with you?
I don't think no. I don't remember having conversations about toothbrushes ever in my life.
Right? Which is wild. And I know this is going to sound silly because you hear the passion in my voice. Go to our Trustpilot. I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but Trustpilot is the most authoritative reviews website because it's very sort of independent. If you go into our Trustpilot, you'll see over 1,500 5-star reviews. We got a score of 4.8, which is excellent. We're the most highly rated electric toothbrush on the market. But people are saying I love this. I'm excited to brush my teeth. I've told all my friends, like, I'm your like best salesperson. Every day we get these wonderful messages from consumers saying like, I always thought you had to hate it. It was a chore, but I'm not lying. Like, I love it. Like, what's wrong with me, etc. And like the reviews are just incredible from people who realize that this, like, 2 minutes twice a day can actually be like a really beautiful experience, which sounds like hyperbole, but you just got to read the reviews.
It's interesting. I often think about this exact same thing with what Whoop did for sleep. I couldn't pre-Whoop, I couldn't imagine that someone would be able to find a way to make sleep as sexy and interesting as they have, and the desire to look first thing in the morning, what was my sleep score, etc. So for you guys to do it for teeth is remarkable. What do you put that down to? And I assume there's an element of the Good Samaritan element as well, like there'd be a level of pride that comes with, I'm also looking after the planet. But what do you put it down to that has them excited about brushing their teeth?
I would like to use an analogy. Have you ever been to a really fancy restaurant?
A few times in my life.
Yeah, right. And have you ever come away a bit disappointed?
Often, very often.
Very often.
Yeah, and well, because I put it on a pedestal. That's where that's the mistake I've made.
High expectations, right? Like if you go to like somewhere really fancy, you got super high expectations, and then anything short of this like thing that you've put into your head, then is like, oh, it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. Maybe it was like still amazing, but you thought it was going to be so incredible. It doesn't meet that. I think with electric toothbrushes, people's expectations are like rock bottom. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's just to the point where you like people even stop thinking about it. It's like you have to do it. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to wear a Whoop band. You have to brush your teeth, right? And this is like the difference. It's like the difference between like vitamins and paracetamol. Paracetamol solves a problem, a literal pain point, whereas vitamins is like, like maybe I'll feel even better. And so I think people have such low expectations with their toothbrush that just doing simple things like, we don't have a Bluetooth app, but the battery lasts 40 days on a single charge. So you could have charged your brush, come to Europe for 5 weeks, not had to have charged it once. It's half the size of a traditional electric brush. We use aluminium rather than plastic, so it's got a really premium feel. It's available in beautiful colors. We have a UV light in our case, which kills 99.9% of bacteria. It's got a magnetic mirror mount so that you don't get that horrible gunk that accumulates on the bottom. And it's just like simple human insights. Do you know what I mean? We haven't gone for like 9 flashing colors, 10 different cleaning modes, Bluetooth apps, because you don't need them.
I tell you what, I don't know if your background is in sales, but you could fair income sell ice to an Eskimo the way you just sold that toothbrush. Like, I want it. I don't even know if you can get it in Australia.
You can.
Mate, I'm buying one.
And for your listeners, I can give a discount code. So
look, there you go. The way you just sold it.
Put in Blake 15, you will get a 15% discount.
Let's talk about that. Because the way you just sold it, again, if I come back to the Whoop example, they made sleep sexy. You just, for the first time in my life, made brushing my teeth really exciting. And I don't know whether you've practiced that script in front of the mirror 1,001 times or not. I don't care. It was good enough for me.
You know what? It's something, and this kind of reminds me back from the start to like that story of how I met you, but like, it's just the truth. Like, it's so easy to tell you exactly what we do when it comes from the heart. Like I don't even feel like I'm selling. Like, it's just genuinely, this is what the product does. And that's why it gets the 4.8, star reviews, as well as the fact that we have like, fully recyclable packaging, all sorts of different things, and excellent customer service. So yeah, this could be the last toothbrush you ever buy, because we also have this crazy innovation. We just won the Fast Company Most Innovative Company of the Year award in New York recently. We were there with OpenAI. I mean, that's crazy. Like a toothbrush and OpenAI, like to even be in the same room is it's almost laughable, because we have this innovation called a tiny screw. That tiny screw I've got a tiny screwdriver as well, so that when the battery dies, we can replace the battery. 99.9% of other toothbrushes don't have that. So when the battery dies, you have to throw it away and you have to buy a whole new one. We spoke to 26 factories, 25 of them literally laughed down the phone at us being like, why would you repair it? Just sell them a new one. Like, we want to sell toothbrushes, we want to repair them. And we're like, well, no, it's not super economical for like the user. And like, also like it's totally possible to repair a battery, like to replace a battery. So why wouldn't you buy a toothbrush with us, and it could be the last one you ever buy?
This is really interesting timing. You're a smart man, so you may have the answer to this. There's a name for that was invented 100 years ago when it came to the light bulb, and most companies use it in that I can't remember. I was literally watching a video this week on it. I've posted it somewhere in my world. There's a name for it where they intentionally shorten the life of batteries, etc.
Yeah.
Not you guys. You're going the other way.
Well, this is it. Like, whilst everyone's doing that, we're trying to do it the other way, because if you can, rather than having to like buy your $200, competitor brand every 2-3 years because it breaks, we can simply, you return it to us, we can replace the battery, and you're set for another 5-6 years with ours because you don't have to charge it so regularly. But coming back to, when you were saying like it's persuasive the way I'm selling it, it's like it's just very heartfelt and authentic, which really I just want to call you on from baby bathwater, because like heartfelt and authentic is something that is like an energy you resonate from like a distance. And you can see people like flocking sort of towards you who don't even know you, and I was certainly one of them, just from that sort of aura of calm that you provide for people, and that wild breathwork experience that you led. And I think not many people could do it in that way. So I just want to say thank you for that, and thank you for being here.
I appreciate that. To speak to your point exactly, it's you can have the best. I hate even some of the language that gets used in marketing, tripwires and just some of that really average chat. But like at the end of the day, your passion for what you do and what you speak to speaks loudest. And, if people are really attuned to themselves and they'll know that it just is from the heart. And fuck, who wouldn't want to work with someone who's that passionate and from the heart with what they do as well? And it does, it really can be anything. It really can be anything. And it's really, we're in such a fortunate position to have 150 odd people there, similar to you and I, so passionate about what we do, such a warmth and such a giving nature. And of course, you want to connect with them, and potentially do business with them. But like that heart to heart, that passion, that human connection element is, whether it's, people talk B2B, B2C, whatever, but like P2P as well, person to person. Like it was enjoyable to have so many of those conversations, over the course of 5 days. And, I've been fortunate enough this week to speak to 3 of you guys from Baby Bathwater, and it just continues to make me smile, the opportunities that we had in just the 5 days that was. So both of us would happily promote the event. It was just unbelievable. But yeah, mate, the energy that you bring is unreal when you speak about, the work that you do. So yeah, I want to kind of commend you on that as well.
Thank you very much. I mean, there's so many exciting things happening. So, we're called Suri. We just celebrated our first anniversary of shipping our product. We've hit like a strong 7-figure amount in that time. In the next 12 months, it's like we're very much on track to hit 8 figures in our second year, which is fantastic. We've just signed a deal with a top Hollywood person who's really behind what we're doing. So you'll be seeing that come Christmas, and we're going into some of the largest retailers, in the world. And so it's just this wild ride, and we're really excited to be able to bring our mission to as many people as possible.
What do you put in hindsight? Because correct me if I'm wrong, that you've scaled 2 7-figure businesses pretty quickly as well. Like, what do you? And there might be different approaches or tools or methodologies that you've used, but what do you put it down to being able to scale that quickly upon reflection?
I mean, with the first one, it was like a lot of luck, to be honest. Like we won some massive contracts, very fortunately. This one though is much more. Is a totally different beast. And I think this one is basically getting, finding that product market fit that people talk about, where, people are like, I've been waiting years for this, and like finally there's the solution. But actually it's the quality of the product. So like, you might see something, hear about it, it sounds desirable, but then when you have it, when you use it, Procter & Gamble call that the SMOT, the second moment of truth. When you actually use a product, does it deliver on its promises? And fortunately, we've got a product that like over delivers on its promises. And so like the experience and the quality of the clean is so good that then, people talk about it to their friends. And so we get loads of like word of mouth, to use a bit of a pun in the toothbrush game, but like it works. And so, then you get great reviews, and then you get press coverage, and you get more purchases, and you get more reviews, and you get more press coverage, and then it feeds this great cycle. So I think that's what's driving this one. And yeah, this is growing much faster than anything I've ever worked on.
How does that sit with you, from a human component? Because there's so many balls that you juggle in the air. Most people kind of talk about the first 3 to 4 years as, you're wearing different caps and whatever else. But the rate at which you're growing must mean that things are almost changing, I was going to say weekly, but potentially on a daily basis. How do you keep your nervous system regulated? How do you stay focused? Do you find you're reassessing the direction that you're taking regularly? Like, what does that look like in your world?
So I guess probably the answer is I don't keep my focus. I don't keep my nervous system regulated. And I'm just making this up as I go along to an extent, right? So jokes aside, running my last company is, real highs, real lows, definitely had elements of burnout after certain projects. Definitely had just total elation, running a 7-figure business in my 20s and traveling around Europe doing incredible things. But with this one, I've now got 2 children, Leo, who's about 3.5, and then Elsie, who's almost 2. And they really provide such a counterbalance to everything that I'm doing. Now, that's not to say it's not often a struggle, or I'm, I was in China recently, then I was in New York, and having time apart from them is difficult, honestly, because the best part of my day, without a doubt, is when I come home and open the door. They hear me coming through, and then you just hear these little footsteps, like a dog running towards you almost, and then you see their faces, and they're just giggling and laughing, and they run and jump jump into my arms. I go down onto my knees, and we just have a big sort of cuddle and wrestle on the floor, and there's lots of kisses, and it's just pow, I'm whatever's happened that day, I'm totally out of it for those sort of seconds, minutes. Then I probably check my phone again 5 minutes later, but it's been a wild journey. 14 months ago, it was just my co-founder and I, and then we just hired our 12th person. 4 people have joined in the last few weeks, and so it's definitely picking up pace.
Do you find yourself, I know for a lot of people, albeit I think in our worlds, and when I say our worlds, the community of baby bathwater might not fit this mold, but do you find that you have become more risk adverse with having 2 kids as opposed, because a lot of people find themselves not taking as many, challenges or risks for reasons, family reasons and stuff like that. But I think in the, from what I've seen in the entrepreneur world and in particular the baby bathwater crew, I don't think that necessarily aligns with their thoughts around business.
You know what? I read this somewhere. I love business literature. I'm such a geek. I'll read an autobiography of a business person on my holiday or whatever. And I always have done since I was 8. But probably the best business advice, and the thing that actually is a guiding principle for my entire life probably, is I read somewhere that you should always try and manage risk, right? Everything you're doing is managing risk. And by that, I mean, take steps to minimize your downside and maximize your upside. And in everything you do, you should just be trying to find out ways, how can I make sure that this is the lowest risk possible while has a big upside, which kind of makes sense. But I really seek to apply that with everything. And so some people say, oh, it's so risky, setting up your own company or whatever. But, there's certain things you can do to mitigate it, whether it's reduce your cost of living, for example. You don't need to do certain holidays, and actually the kids just the favorite thing is going to the park, and we go on the swings and go for a little cycle and stuff, and it really doesn't cost that much. And so I've taken proactive steps, when I was setting it up, to say okay, where can I minimize costs, minimize outgoings? But then I'm also very fortunate. My partner has a very successful job in finance, and so, do you know what I mean? I'm not going to get up here and say I've risked the whole house or anything like that, because I haven't. I have that sort of level of support as well. And then also, I put a time limit on it. When I set up my first business, I said I've got savings after leaving Pringles that would last me a few years. I'm going to take 1 year of those savings. I'm going to give everything I can to setting up a business. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, after 12 months, I can say I gave it a shot. But I would rather get to the end of my life knowing that I've tried something, de-risked it, and it didn't work, than to never try at all.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I can't remember whether I heard it this week, actually, and it was a real good thought for me, whether it was Hormozy or someone else, essentially saying would you like to, have your kids see you like doing the rest of your life half-assed, in terms of passion because you wanted to play safe, or really passionate because you gave it a crack and you were really aligned with what was deep for you? And I really like that. For me, landed perfectly of like, fuck yes, that's the way that I think. And that's, no doubt that the way that many entrepreneurs think, like the full version of you as a dad, as a, mum, because you're really living aligned with your passion, purpose, mission, has to have a big rub off on your kids.
It does, but like I would just like be like super clear to say, like, that doesn't mean you have to be an entrepreneur. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to like have 7 figures. When you said P2P, person to person, like, and like one of my favorite things is when you just see anyone doing a job with like absolute passion and joy. Yeah. That can be a barista. Everyone knows, everyone's had that experience where you go in and like normally maybe they're not like super engaged or whatever, but you always have like one, and like they just brighten your day. You look forward to seeing them because they're just giving their heart and soul to their job. And you know what I mean? Like that same person who like gives that level of like passion and joy and what you're giving everything to their job, I think, can also sort of deliver that at home. So I think it's important to say, like, it doesn't have to be that you're like a 7-figure entrepreneur. And likewise, being an entrepreneur is also not for everyone, right? Like there's absolute joy as well in, like, for some people, like not being totally passionate about their job, doing it to earn an income because that's what they need to do, and then like spending their time, more time with their family. Like I spend less time with my family without a doubt than most people with like a regular 9-to-5 would. It's a trade-off. So it's a trade-off that I'm happy with right now, with the balance. And it's very much set with the intention that, I can then have more freedom in the future to spend like a lot more time with my kids when and where I want.
Love it. If someone was starting out or in the early stages of business, what advice based on your time in business would you give them?
I would say, well, how long do you have? I mean,
make it really succinct. See how you go.
Okay. Firstly, 99% of people just don't take the first step. So if you just take one step, you're ahead of 99% of people. Like you're already in like the 1% of people who've like tried to do something. 2, minimize your risk and maximize your upside. If I was setting out now, I would sell some form of PDF, like a checklist or some, like, it's like there's so, it costs you time to set up. It doesn't cost you money. If you've got like access to a computer, you can create some sort of content or course, which, you can either research thoroughly and like, put into like succinct notes or something like that. And I would sell it because it's like 99% margin. Then if you can find someone who can like scale that through ads, then you're off to the races. I bought 2 e-commerce checklists for $47 each, and they were Google Sheets. The guy, I mean, must have been laughing all the way to the bank. Very low risk, huge upside, could make easily 100K by selling 2,000 of them, right? It's like, so you just find that. And yeah, that's what I would do. And then lastly is just, I would just come back to de-risk, like, de-risk something, maximize the upside, and don't look to always do it on your own. Like I think I couldn't do Suri without Yves, my co-founder. Likewise, I couldn't have done my last business without Xavier and Christian. Like it's a real, you find people who complement, work out what you enjoy and what you're good at, and find other people who can complement those skills.
And if people want to get the world's best toothbrush for themselves and experience what it is that you're talking about, where is the best spot for them to find out about you and these toothbrushes you speak of?
So the best place for the toothbrushes is www.trysuri, so SURI.com. And yeah, we ship worldwide. Unfortunately, we have to pay a little fee at the moment to ship to Australia, but we are in discussions with some Australian retailers. So your listeners from Australia can certainly sort of grab them in stores sooner rather than later. And then for me, I'm on Instagram at Mark Rushmore, or on LinkedIn. I mean, if anyone has any questions, I'd love to help out. I always love being able to help if I can.
Mate, your passion is unbelievable. So good. And it's so good to see, and so insightful as well, all your thoughts around business. So I appreciate you taking the time out to chat.
Amazing. Thank you for inviting me. It's a real honor.